I would like to ask my audience a question. Do you think prepping is a good idea? I know it sounds like a loaded question. You're wondering, oh, what's he going to drop on us now? But just stick with me, because in this video, I want to reveal for you one of the biggest psyops being run on the conservative Christian community. You see, we call it prepping and survivalist methodology, coupled with things that were learned in the military and just basic common sense, things that were passed down from our grandfathers and great-grandfathers about just good planning and preparedness. Is it a good idea to have a group of people that you trust, that in times of strife or times of trouble, that you can lean on when everything falls apart? Is that a good idea? Is it a good idea to know how to cure things and deal with things naturally without pharmaceuticals or without having to run to the hospital every 5 seconds? Are these good ideas? Growing your own food, preserving your own food, trade and barter, cook from scratch, save your own seed, being self-sufficient? See, I think a lot of you are like, yeah, these are real good ideas. What are you talking about, Mucky? What the hell? It's all over YouTube. Haven't you seen any of these people? They'll teach you how to pretty much go off the grid and do everything that you would ever need to do without having to be connected to the New World Order or the Illuminati or the One World Government or any of it. It's everywhere. But you see, this isn't the psychological operation. The people in this world today that are actually putting all of these techniques and methodologies to real-world practice are being demonized. All of this kind of stuff that your grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and grandmothers knew as part of everyday survival, it's being used today. All this stuff. It's become a way of life for a certain group of people that you have been taught by the media to hate, to loathe, and to demonize, and to ridicule. And it's not YouTubers. Because here, it's all just theoretical until you get to a situation where the rubber meets the road, and then it'll start to be real. But it's already been real. Very real for the last 5-6 years for a certain group of people in the world. But you see, they call them evil socialists and communists. But let's see what the definition of, without using that word, socialist, commune. Most people, though they have heard the term mentioned, have heard very little about the reality of communes in the Bolivarian Revolution. A commune is made up of the habitants within a self-defined territory based on a shared historical memory, cultural features, practices, and customs which are recognized in the territory they occupy, as well as the productive activities that serve as sustenance. To give that a concrete example, the commune where this particular speaker lives, not me, the Comuna Atoroa defined the area of the commune because of the common history of struggle for access to water and health services that was held in the 1980s between several adjacent communities. These communities also shared a central market and a local health center. So there were cultural, social, and economic ties that already bound the community together. In the case of some rural communes, it could be the type of agricultural production or communities that were built around large landowners whose lands were expropriated, as in the case of Comuna El Maizal in the state of Lara, or in the case of indigenous communities. I do know English, guys, I promise. It may be ethnic or family ties that bring communities together. And what this article here talks about, and this is from Counterpunch, talks about survivalism. It talks about SHTF, when shit hits the fan, like it has in Venezuela. Whatever reason you would want to ascribe to what happened in Venezuela, even though we know the truth to be what I've revealed it to be here, and if anybody doesn't know what that is, well, you can go back and listen to how the U.S. in 2015 decided to destroy the third largest exporter of oil in the world. Most of the people of this country had nothing to do with that, even though they're the ones taking it on the chin. So what did they have to do? They had to learn to deal. They had to learn to deal pueblo a pueblo a pueblo. And this is Venezuela analysis. And this talks about communities getting together, learning, okay, this is what my neighbors and I, this is what we can do. This is what we do well. This isn't going to fill all of our needs, of course, but we're going to go into other communities and say, okay, what can you do well? What can they do well? And how can we put this back together for ourselves? How can we use barter? How can we use the skills and talents and drive and desire of the people of our regions to make our lives better? Without the involvement of government, without the involvement of higher authorities in cities and places that have nothing to do with us. This is what's been going on in Venezuela. They have literally shown the way. They've shown how it can be done, how it's not impossible, how it's not a completely out of this world idea to think that you can stand up after something like this happens, work together, and make your life be your own. One of the side effects of this is they've seen violence actually plummet. When all of a sudden these kids that had nothing more to do with their time than to go out and do stupid shit realize they have a mission in life now, that they're part of the community that needs them. Amazing the resources and the ingenuity and the drive and the energy that's been put into these communes. It's an amazing, amazing thing to see if you want to know where to look. But of course, they have to label it with that nasty S word, the socialism word. Because you see, here in America, when we think of socialists, we think of a whole bunch of people all sitting around just waiting for their government check. And that's not at all what is going on in Venezuela. There are no government checks. There is no government riding to the rescue. Here, socialism is survival. Here, working together and using your group effort and the leverage that having a group gives you is absolutely necessary. But it's also about sovereignty. These people determine the laws for their own regions. They determine who does what and when and where based on what's good for the group. Who out there has watched The Walking Dead? Who out there has watched the show Colony? You see, these are things, and there's even some small references to it in a kind of a little series called Continuum that you can find on Netflix. But the first season of Colony, just like the first season of The Walking Dead, shows what happens. Now you take away the zombies, and you can see some really good prepping techniques, and you can see the dynamics of what happens when people are forced to work together. But of course, the people in the government, our government, the globalists, have to use this nasty word to get the people that are most likely to succeed in communal effort, meaning the conservatives in this country. You see, they have to turn you away from that idea because, oh no, that's socialist, it's evil. Because they want to redefine what that is. See these people here? See, in South America, they'd be called leftist socialists. Right here. Worshipping together, living together, lifting each other up, supporting each other. This is leftist socialism in South America. So just so you know what you would be labeled as when this goes down, that's what you'll be called. You'll be called the enemy for this. For not bowing the knee to all of the pills and all of the injections and all of the treatments that Big Pharma wants to foist on you. You're going to be labeled as crazies. And they're going to label you with the S word, socialists. Because this is the way that's been shown by other socialists. You see, you hear all the bad stuff. You hear about Marx and Lenin and Russia and all this other stuff, and that's the idea you have in your head. But that's the political version of socialism. But when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, this is how things used to be in this country, where neighbors leaned on neighbors and nobody gave a rat's ass who the president was. It was the most least important thing in your life. Groups of people working together to make everybody's life better. Not so slave to, it's kind of ironic me saying this here on YouTube, but there are days that some of the best memories I have are of a John boat in the middle of a little pond with a cane pole and a plastic tub full of worms. This kind of stuff is being done right now, right down south of our border, and not theoretically, and not because they had to. They didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice. The 31 million people live in Venezuela didn't have anything to do with the decisions made in Caracas, but this is what they were forced to do, and they've made it happen. It's an amazing, amazing thing to read about if you know where to go read about it and hear about it. Just about any technique or method or YouTube video that you see out there saying this is how you do this, that, and the other is being done right now on the ground in Venezuela. So, I just wanted to leave it there and warn you that you are eventually going to be labeled something that you have learned to hate. But don't think for 1 minute that you can't win. This is the last thing I'll speak about. After Mr. Maduro won the election and the U.S. was forced to recognize him, after a dozen other major powers recognized him, they went to the Organization of American States and tried to get Venezuela kicked out. Well, they voted on it, and to do this, they needed a 2/3 majority. Now, to hear the U.S. tell it, every country down there was just completely against the idea of what's going on in Venezuela, and they thought them to be horrible dictators and should be renounced. Well, guess how the vote went? Ready for this? 19 members for, 4 against, and 11 abstentions. So basically 19-15. Does that sound like overwhelming support for the United States? 11 countries abstained. Said we're not going to be drawn into this bullshit argument. So, it can be done. It can be done, and they're doing it. And if you have a group of like-minded folks you can work with, count yourself lucky. But just remember, you're going to be labeled socialists. Like, share, subscribe.